say we jump in. Guys, I'm psyched because part of my goal here is to interview people doing awesome stuff, living lives that they love, doing stuff that helps and contributes to others in the ways that they are uniquely called. So I've had a lot of skydivers on because obviously I know a lot of skydivers. This guy, Jeff Sanders, I was connected to through one of my other friends, my friend Carrie Gormley, who also has a podcast. And I'm voracious for podcasts. And I've been on as a guest on many podcasts. I've been on Jeff's show before, but his podcast is really rich with content that helps us level up and do better. And it's called the 5 a.m. Miracle, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love it. And so, I mean, it's so funny. I have a bunch of different podcasts in my thing, but I recently listened to one that you did, and I just love the content that helps us level up. So guys, Jeff Sanders, welcome. And Jeff, I kind of want to just start by asking you, like, what inspired you to do your 5 a.m. Miracle podcast?
That's a great question. There's a lot of my kind of mid-20s tied into this answer, mostly because I mean, for a long time, I wanted to be a podcaster. I have an undergrad degree in theater, and I always wanted to do something performance-related, entertainment. Originally, I wanted to be on television. I wanted to be a journalist, and then realized I didn't like journalism, but I wanted to somehow be involved in something like that. So after college, I became a voracious podcast listener. So I was listening on the way to work, during work, on the way home from work, just constantly, and realized I wanted to do a show. But then the question was, well, what's the content going to be? I'm not just going to babble for an hour. I need something to talk about. And so I was at the time working a full-time job. I had a side business, which is what I now do full-time. And I was trying to train for a marathon and realized my calendar is completely full. I have no time for anything. How do I make this work? And so I realized the best thing to do was to wake up early and to see if that was going to be a good, but just cut me off.
No, you're good. I heard everything. Yeah,
Okay,
keep
great.
rolling. Yep.
All right, great. So then I realized right away that like I need to wake up early if I want to have time to get all these things done.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, how about tomorrow morning? Let's wake up at 5 a.m. and go for a run and see if that works. And so I did, and I loved it. And
So
then
cool.
I got hooked on early mornings. And then I was like, well, this is my podcast. This is the topic. I'm going to somehow make this work. And so the podcast kind of grew out of my love for early mornings, for marathoning, for being productive with your time. And so my show for the last 4.5 years has been all around those topics, personal growth, everything related to habits and how can we kind of get the most out of our day. That's really been the focus. And so that's been what I've been talking about for 4.5 years, and I love it. And I just want to do more of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's so cool because when I started listening to your show, this was a couple of years ago now, what I was training for the New York Marathon, which is how we connected through Carrie Gormley's podcast, The Running Lifestyle Show. And I was starting to listen. Oh, can you hear me? I got cut off as well. So I was living in Vermont, sort of not really skydiving very much, just doing my couple of years off. And I got really into early mornings as well. And I loved it because no one was bugging me. It's funny, I listened to one of your shows the other day and you mentioned something about having a love-hate relationship with meditation.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, that is so me. I'm like, I have this weird thing where I think that there's something there for me, but I also am really not that into it. So I'm sort of in my evolution similar to what you described about that. But anyway, the morning routine really worked for me. And so that's why I really liked your show. And obviously it was just one of those, I don't know, it's just a really valuable thing. So anyway, I don't do the early mornings anymore. And this is funny. The reason I'm sharing this is because it's the stuff that you share in your show. You don't have to just get up early to get value from it. That's what I wanted to say. Cause like, it's still super useful for me, even though I live near New York City now, it's a much later thing. My timeline of day I get up later, but I stay up later and that works for me now. So it doesn't matter. But anyway, I just wanted to say that as a support for people to listen to your stuff, regardless of whether they're early morning people or not. So my next question for you is, you gave a little bit of your story, but like, give us more of your like life story. I know that's like a big question, but like, give us sort of the path of how you got to here. Cause I'm a life coach too. I like to hear people's stories,
Sure. I guess my story begins in Missouri. It's where I was born, Columbia, Missouri, which is a college town. So University of Missouri is there. So Mizzou Tigers are like the big thing. So I grew up in this like raw college town environment. Did not go to school there. I went to school in a little bitty town called Kirksville, Missouri, a little 90 miles north. So my goal kind of growing up for a long time was like very theater focused. My friends were all doing a lot of theater. So I wanted to be a performance in some way. So a lot of my life was involved in tons of activities. I was always involved in everything. And that kind of led me to, I can think why I became who I did after college, because I wrote a book and had a blog called Graduated and Clueless, where I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And
Fascinating.
everything up to that point had led to this kind of exploration of lots of different topics. So I
Yep.
was trying a lot of different activities. I was doing lots of different, just jobs. I was doing whatever I could to just experience life in new ways
Love it.
because I couldn't pick any of them. Everything to me was interesting. And so, which leads to no career path. It leads to no direction in life. It just leads to kind of chaos, which is fine on some level. But I was really looking for focus. And so that for me was most of my life was driven by passion. Like I'm
Sure.
interested in a topic, I try it. And so that's why I chose theater and ultimately psychology as my kind of double degrees in college because I liked doing them. I had no clue if they were going to go anywhere, no
Right.
idea what I would do with it, but knew that I liked it. I want to be a part of it. And let's just kind of see what happens from there. Uh,
Yeah.
and so after I went to college, my wife got into grad school in Boston. So we moved to Boston. Once again, just like I have no reason not to go. So let's just go check out Boston. And so I moved there. I got some random jobs. I worked for Apple selling computers. I worked at Citibank as a teller. I worked in door-to-door sales selling Verizon phone service, like
Yep.
random stuff because it paid the bills while I figured out what I want to do with my life.
I love it. What I love, just to interject quickly,
Sure.
I love that I hear the undertone of a growth minded person who's open to life experience. Like, I personally highly value life experience. I really enjoy trying new things. And I feel like I hear that in what you're describing also. But what I also love is that you are clearly in action, even though you didn't know what you wanted to do. Because that's the thing. A lot of people come to me not sure of their direction. So they're sort of paralyzed in, like, I don't want to make the wrong choice, so I'm not going to do anything. And a big part of getting through that unknown, I'm not sure what direction to go, is to be cool with anything that you try
Mm.
and learn from it, which is what it sounds like you did. The idea of doing odd jobs, I'm like, yeah, that, I hear that and I go, fuck yeah, that's awesome. You know what I mean? I do swear on
Mhm.
my podcast, so just, I'm
Oh, go
sorry.
for it.
I
Yeah.
apologize. So that's really, really cool. Anything else on that you'd want to share?
Well, I think that my path after I graduated was in Boston. That's where I kind of began the whole graduating clueless thing.
Yep.
And then my wife finished grad school, and so we had the question of where do we want to go in the world now? What's our next step? And we both knew one thing that was clear: we don't like Boston. We're not
Yeah.
like it's a fun town, but like living there is hard. It's cold. It's expensive. People there are kind of angry. So it wasn't really our vibe. So we're like, where can we go? It's a better fit. And so
Right.
we looked at it on a map and said, well, let's live somewhere close to our family in Missouri, but not in Missouri. And so we chose Nashville, Tennessee randomly, impulsively, and just moved. Like literally signed a lease over the internet for an apartment and then drove in. Our first time to ever be in the state of Tennessee was the day we moved into Nashville.
That is
And
so
so
fun.
it was the most random thing I've ever done in my entire life, but we're still here 8.5 years later.
I
So
love it.
it's been a great fit. And we moved to Nashville. And once again, my odd jobs continued, knowing the whole time, though, that I wanted to do something more with what I was finding was a good fit for me. So that
Yeah.
the path was kind of starting to reveal itself in the sense that I knew that there were speakers and authors and podcasters that I loved. And I realized at one point along the line, I want to do what they're doing. I
Yeah.
want to emulate them. And so that's when
Absolutely.
I was moving to Nashville is when I first began to set those roots into play to say, let's launch a website, launch a blog, launch a podcast. Let's get this off the ground.
Yeah.
So now it's 8 years later and all that stuff started, but it took some time to cultivate. But I finally started to put the pieces together to figure out this is where my life is going to go.
I love that. I love it. It takes courage at every turn. And
Mm.
it's interesting how usually we don't even know, at least for me, I didn't even know entrepreneurship was a thing. Even
Right.
though my dad is a total entrepreneur, it's totally around me. But
Mm.
I'm like, I for some reason didn't even realize that I could be in business for myself in this type of way until I actually was in business by myself. I literally remember a moment I was sitting in my desk in my house and I was like, oh shit, it's all me now.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's so scary, but it's also so enlivening and so motivating when you are doing something that you actually care about, which is why, like, your story and how you're like, okay, I'm figuring it out. And it's always this messy thing. I
Mhm.
like to illuminate that it's not an easy thing to choose to do your passion or your purposeful pursuit or whatever. There's tons of hard work and confusion and uncertainty inside that as well. And it's possible,
Mhm.
you know, and you can still do it. So
Yeah.
it's just really cool. All right. So next question, just because a lot of my audience is skydivers, and
Mhm.
I know that you have a skydiving story, I just wanted to quickly hear your skydiving story. It might be of interest to people. So tell me your skydiving story if you would, please.
Sure. I think it's interesting because it's like the most like ridiculous thing I can like, look back on and say like, I did that bucket list check. I've done it one time. I'm not gone back. I do want to go back and do it again. But what my goal was, I turned 29 and I said, okay, I've chosen like bucket list goals the last few years. I'm going to choose skydiving as like bucket list goal for my 29th birthday. I'm going to make this happen. I
Yeah.
was working a day job at the time. And so I went to all my coworkers and said, hey guys, I'm going to go jump in a month. Come with me. And so I invited like 35 people I worked with. I was like, everybody's coming. We're going to do this. Well, of the 35-ish coworkers I had, about 15 of them said, yes, I want to do that.
Yep.
And then 8 of them ultimately like told me like, okay, it's on my calendar. I'm going to be there on that Saturday morning. We're going to jump. That Saturday morning showed up. I get to the airport and it's just me. Nobody showed up. It was literally me and my wife waiting around. Nobody came. And so
Totally normal, by the way.
yes.
Totally normal.
Yes. Which was, I mean, a little frustrating because I wanted it to be like a group thing because, like, there's a lot of fear involved and like I don't want to jump by myself. And yet it's still like I wanted to go. I was committed to doing it though. So I decided
Awesome.
to do it. Had a little mini course to teach us, how to, follow the plane properly.
Yeah.
But my experience was basically I've never liked airplanes that much. So I
Uh-huh.
was more afraid of the airplane ride than flying out of the plane.
Love it.
And so on the
Fascinating.
way up, I was like getting like super freaked out. And on my actual plane, there was like probably 6 people that were solo jumpers in front of me. And
Uh-huh.
then like, the paired tandem jumpers behind me. I was the first tandem jumper. And so
Okay.
I watched 6 people just jump by themselves. And I was like literally like losing myself on the airplane, like freaking out because I couldn't picture how I was going to make the jump. Well, fortunately, it wasn't my choice because the guy attached to me like hoisted me up and just threw me out. So there was no question about it. Like I was not going to get to choose. Um, and so then from there, I couldn't be like freaking out about like the airflow in my face and like just kind of trying to figure it all out. I eventually did, but like
Yeah.
the hardest part, the absolute hardest part was the actual get me off the airplane part.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, it was a ton of fun and it was easy, but just all that fear that built up and
Totally.
yeah.
Well, which is what that is the exit moment in skydiving. And by the way, I vividly remember the first time I saw someone exit an airplane in front of me. Vividly. I will never not remember that. It was my friend Linda who was doing a static line jump before me doing a static line jump. She
Oh,
just
sorry, the video just cut out. I just lost what you just said.
Oh, can you hear me? I've heard you the whole time, and since I'm recording, I think we're good.
Okay. Okay.
You guys are seeing the technical difficulties that are at play
That's
in
right.
this type of business. It's all good. No, I love that. And I love that you brought up fear because obviously using skydiving as a metaphor for overcoming fear and making sort of a courageous leap when we are met with fear, because it doesn't have to be jumping out of a freaking airplane. The fear that we feel is the same, whether it's I'm going to actually say I'm doing my business or I'm going to start my podcast, this dream I have, or I'm going to leave an aircraft in flight and hopefully not die, or I'm going to ask this person out on a date, like whatever. It could be anything. So tell me about another thing in your life where you would say is an example of where you overcame a fear or employed your courage in a way that was, good for you.
Well, I think in a similar vein, public speaking me. I've been a podcaster for years, and then I have a lot of experience being an actor on stage as a character. And what's fascinating to me is the juxtaposition between like I'm gonna put on a mask, put on some makeup, put on a costume, and be an actor. Like
Yep.
it's memorized lines. I've done it 1,000 times. Like I could be an actor in front of an audience of an enormous auditorium and have no fear about it whatsoever. But if
Yeah.
it's just going to be me on stage as myself talking to an audience, it is a night and day difference. And so
I
I
agree.
learned how to be on stage as an adult that I had conquered as a kid. And so it was this bizarre sense of like, okay, I'm like re-begin on and be myself and be comfortable with myself and teach something, kind of prepare the audience for something interesting. Like it was a huge challenge. And still every single time I get on stage, that same sense of like, okay, here we go.
I
Like
know.
I got to do this. Let's make this happen. And that same sense of fear is still there. And I have to
Yeah.
get on stage and do my thing and get warmed up. And it's a process. And even doing a podcast recording, or even recording for this, like stage, so to speak, there's
Yep.
always that sense of, okay, let's
Totally.
prepare for this, let's make it happen. And I have to go through the mental, hurdles of how can I be my best when I get there.
So true. It's so interesting because I love that you brought up the public speaking. That's actually something I'm working on myself. One of the reasons why I chose to do Facebook Live as a goal of mine is that it feels to me that I am stepping on stage. Every time I press go live, I have that experience. So I'm getting basically more practice of working through that fear. You know what I mean? And I'm getting in front of people more and more because I'm like, how can I iterate? I can't just wait for every keynote that I get because then I'll just be nervous. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
So the Facebook Live has been helping me work through that fear. And I actually wanted to ask you, the next question I had written down is, what do you actually do when you feel that? What's your practice or process to like kind of diffuse that in yourself as much as you can?
What I like to do is really lean on the things that I'm comfortable doing. So like, and for example, if I'm giving a speech, there's certain topics that I know that if I talk about this topic, like I kind of just get into like autopilot mode, where I can just talk about this for hours. Like you
Yeah,
asked me before, like my story, the 5 a.m. miracle, I've given that story 1,000 times. And
totally.
so my best way to kind of get over the fear of initially with a public speaking event or anything like that is to begin whatever I'm doing with something I know really well, that
Yeah,
I'm very confident in, that I'm not questioning or not. It's like, I know it. I can do this in my sleep here, and then let myself kind of move into, the more nuanced, new content or things that are harder for me. And so
love
by
it.
beginning with my strengths, I overcome the fear without thinking about it as much.
So
And
great.
it's easy to kind of master that flow. It's really a warm-up process, but it's a way to get you in the motions, without having to freak out about, like, what am I going to say next? It's like, I know what I'm going to say next. It's already there. Get the words out and go, you know?
I know, it's amazing like how it comes up in my physical body. Like it's so fascinating to witness the fight or flight
Mm.
response. So it's the only reason I bring that up is that it's so ubiquitous that we all feel it when we're going and trying to do something either new, something that we care about, that we're attached to the outcome, aka we care about it and want it to go well. Like that's such a normal thing. And then there are ways to set ourselves up for success while still inching forward past these benchmarks that we haven't passed yet in our efforts. Just really good stuff. Which
Mhm.
brings me to my next question, which is, what are you working on now that you're really psyched about? Like what's next for you, or what are you working on that you're fired up on?
Current project is my new book launch that comes out in February. So that has been my big focus all summer long. I was writing. This fall has been nothing but just like book launch preparation and how to get out the door, and a lot of editing and tweaking. So this is my biggest book launch so far, and I'm super excited about it. So there's a lot of pieces in place with this, and I don't even know half what I'm going to be doing in the next few months besides just like, get myself out there and get the word out. So it's going to be a lot of fun, but I'm
I
excited.
love it. Congratulations. What is the title? Tell us the title, because we can always reshare this episode when it launches. Be like, we were talking about it in December. Boom.
So the book is called The Free Time Formula: Finding Happiness, Focus, and Productivity No Matter How Busy You Are.
Oh, love it.
So with that title in mind, the book is really about saying, like, I know you're a high achiever. I know you're overly busy. A lot of that's built into the book too, is kind of how I got myself to a point where productivity was more important than my health and more important than my sanity, which led to all kinds of breakdowns I discussed in the book. And so the book is really about like how to not only avoid my mistakes, but most important is to say like I can get the things done that matter, and I have the free time and the flexibility and the margin to live a healthy life as well.
Yeah, it's so huge. I love that. I love that you brought that up, because especially for purpose-driven people, I mean, but for anybody who's, working on something they care about, it could be even just, I want to make money to support my family and put food on the table and stuff like that. Like, it doesn't have to be purpose. Like, but we have things that we care about making happen. It's so, balance is such like an unsexy word, and self-care is so doesn't sound cool at all. It's like, oh, it's a freaking life coach term. Like, no, that's boring. When we look at it very objectively without the like, life coach thing. And I say that as a life coach, of course, but like, it's so amazing how powerful it is. And it allows us to be sustained long-term on our goals. And it allows us to be there for the people we love in so much deeper, better ways. It allows us to persevere through challenging periods of our work or whatever. Anyways, amazing. Excellent. I can't wait to read it. Fired up. Love it. Well, is there anything I haven't asked you that you would want to share?
Actually, one point that I didn't make earlier about skydiving and public speaking and then the whole idea of fear is that even as I was telling the story about skydiving, I was like reliving it in part. Like telling that story to me is like, I'm going through the motions, which I think brings back to the point we mentioned earlier. It's like, you have to do this stuff a lot. You have to practice this. It's not a thing you master in a day. Yeah. Like, this is an ongoing thing to every single day. I'm going to face a little fear and get a little bit better at it and readdress those things that are still bugging me, because then over time they do get easier, but you have to be intentional about stepping back into that moment again and again and again.
Love that. Thank you for saying that, for real, because especially for people in positions of prominence, like you have a successful podcast, you are out there sort of in a leadership role. So it's easy to put people like you up there going, oh, well, Jeff's successful. No wonder it's easy. It's got to be easy for him. No big deal. When really it's like, well, you just aren't seeing the parts where I'm working through that stuff. You're not seeing the challenging days, nights, and decisions for self-care, or I worked too hard and I got overwhelmed or sick or whatever. Like those, it's great to hear that, I think, from people in positions of leadership, that it is hard work and that you're not failing when you are challenged as well, that you're actually just doing the work.
Yes, totally agree.
So awesome. Well, cool, my friend. How can people find you? What would you direct them to go to?
jeffsanders.com, best place to go. My podcast is there, books are there, all the content I'm working on. So did you lose that?
The internet cut off. Say it again. jeffsanders.com.
jeffsanders.com.
Yay. There, podcast there. What else?
It's all there. Whatever you're looking for is there. So just go there.
Everything in life that you are looking for is there. I love it. Jeff, thank you so much for coming and being a part of this. I just appreciate you and your time and all of this.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it too.